Hello and welcome to The Price of Time, the show where we explore the defining moments that made people who they are today and the impact of those moments over time. Here's your host, Luke Tatum. Hello once again, everyone, and welcome back to The Price of Time. My name is Luke Tatum. I'm very glad that you're choosing to join us, spend some more of your valuable time here with us, learning about the defining moments in people's lives. Today, I'm joined by Bill Becker. Bill is a retired sales and marketing professional with over 35 years experience. He is now taking his superpowers to work on homeless initiatives and evangelizing about sales careers. He is the author of the book, The Job Nobody Dreams of, Inside the Greatest Career You Didn't Know About. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Luke. Happy to be here.
Yeah, excited to talk to you and get more into the details. You know, I always have a pre-show with the guests before we actually get these things going. And so I know a teeny tiny amount about what we're going to get into today, but I leave all the surprises for the actual live conversation. So very excited to hear what you have to say. Now, we're going to be talking about kind of an interesting piece that you read some number of years ago and how your life has changed. So if you could just briefly, summarize kind of what we're honing in on today. What's your defining moment?
Sure. So I'm an information junkie. So I read newsletters and articles and scroll through things, and something that catches my attention, I think, oh, okay, that. So several years ago, I saw this headline that was clearly clickbait, or so I thought. And it was called, "Happiness is Overrated." Well, okay, I'm going to be mad at myself, but I'm going to click on this, right? And, oh, wow, I am so happy that I did, because the gist of it is it's a losing proposition if you're chasing happiness, right? You're always chasing something that, if I just do this, or if I just have this, or if someone will just do this, and it's exhausting. What the author had said, in essence, was what's more important than happiness is peace of mind. And that really got into my soul, because, as you mentioned, that I was in sales for 35 years, which is weird because I guess I started when I was 14. But and I'm the father of 5 kids. And so raising 5 kids was crazy, difficult, wonderful. But you're worried about them. You're worried, are you making enough money? Are you worried about their safety and all these things? And it's like, I just started really thinking about that article and the meaning there. And it's like, I would be happy if I didn't have to worry, the peace of mind.
So that's kind of an interesting take, because I think everyone is usually thinking about their next big thing they're going to achieve, right? And I know there's some research out there that would suggest that, your dopamine hits are actually coming from the pursuit of goals or making meaningful progress towards goals, not the actual achieving of goals in and of itself. And so is that more or less the angle here, or is it just that there's some criteria you need to fulfill where you're just okay after that?
Well, I think it's a personal journey and a personal interpretation, right? I can only speak to mine. So I was in sales my entire, professional career, and it just, and about the time that I read this, I had just gone through a tough divorce. Not sure if there's anything other than that. And I crashed and burned. I mean, the opening paragraph in the book is talking about that I was done. I was going to check out, right? And because I was just exhausted of always worrying about, taking care of my kids. And then that was the point, is how am I going to take care of myself? So it just really resonated. It's like, if I don't need the dopamine rush of being happy and always succeeding or getting material things, or it's just like, hey, my happy place is this piece of grass in Carlsbad, California, and just watching pelicans fly. And so and it makes a lot of sense, I think, for everybody. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I wanted to be on your show is like, it's okay to chase things. I did. I still do. I have goals. I have material goals. I have a bucket list. But to define your life that way, I think is just unhealthy. At least it was for me.
Sure, sure. And I mean, I think maybe there's some stereotypes there, like with the life of a salesperson, right? There's, oh man, I had a really good month. I made some really big sales. I'm living on top of the world. And then it's like, oh man, this next month isn't quite as good. What am I going to do? It's like this emotional roller coaster. And so, what I'm hearing is you've more or less found a way to smooth that roller coaster out a little bit and make it less of a dramatic shift from month to month or week to week or however sales get calculated, but not just for salespeople, right? I mean, for anyone.
I'll give you a great example in my career. So right after 9/11, and that's actually about this time is when the idea of the job nobody dreams of, about sales careers came up is, there were so many layoffs, especially here in Tulsa, where it was very heavy telecommunications, just tons and tons of layoffs. And I was working for a computer training company and I got the state workforce contract, made buku bucks. And I remember, this is so weird. I remember not being that pumped up about it because obviously I was excited. I don't want to be that guy, but I knew this is not long-term, right? This is not sustainable. This is not going to keep going on for years and years. So the idea is appreciate it, which I absolutely did. And you had small little victories, do some extra things for the family and for myself, but just trying to keep a level head and kind of, you said about smoothing out the ups and downs. The same way when you hit a rough patch, which everyone does. It's like, this isn't going to last forever. You're in, part of the deal with sales is like, it's just having conversations. So you're going to have future conversations. You're going to meet other people, have other opportunities. And so, yeah, it's just, I think I'm 63. No. And I'm much, I hope I'm a little more mature, but I have more wisdom, right, than in my 20s. So I realized that, hey, these things are a little bit more important. These other things are not as important. And it's kind of where I think it was always bubbling right there about the surface, but going back to the article, it just brought everything into focus. It's like, this is so cool. And so I share it with people all the time.
Cool. Okay. Well, so let's rewind a little bit, Bill. Let's talk about before you had discovered this article and more or less, I mean, I guess my question is, what was your life like such that this article was such a big deal? Reading this was obviously a big light bulb moment for you, and you were able to implement some things after reading it. But in order for that to be true, things have to have been different before, right? So how was your life before, and what was that transformation like?
Okay, sure. So at the time, I kind of, insinuated that things weren't great. So, but 9 years ago, it was a Monday before Thanksgiving. I had enough. I gave up my dog and I headed to, here in Tulsa, the Creek Turnpike Bridge, and just going to call it a day. Clearly that didn't happen. I was stopped by a police officer and I was grateful for a second chance. I did get 2 days of the Oklahoma version of the 5150. And it was going to end up being 7 days because if I didn't get out of there by Wednesday, I was stuck for the whole week because Thursday's Thanksgiving, Friday, nobody's working. So I had to get the heck out of there. And one of the things, so because I was unemployed at the time, I didn't have insurance. I went to the county. And so I was put in the same facility with people with other, mental challenges and drug challenges. And it was just, it's just the worst place I've ever been. I do remember one little thing that happened that day that I knew I was going to hang on to, because it's like, okay, I'm going to put that in some stand up. I do that on the side, but you're going through the intake and they're asking you all these questions, and your head's kind of down like this. And they go, "Are you registered to vote?" And I put my head up and go, "Are you kidding me? You want, I'm sure there's something behind that." But I go, "I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to use that in some humor." Cause, but it's just like crazy. That's what you're interested in.
Right.
And
Right.
it probably has something to do with funding or
Ridiculous
whatever.
questionnaires, man. I mean, you gotta love it, right?
But so I just kind of sat on the side. There's a TV room. You have where you spend most of the day. I refused to eat, which they told me was not going to get me out of there. But you'd have these little sessions, and I started listening to other people. I watched other people in the common area. It's like, you know what? I overreacted. I felt, because I saw these other people, and it's like, why don't these people have someone on the outside that can help them? I knew I did. I didn't do it. And so I had a couple of people helping me get out of there. A family member, my son, and then, a former coworker, was a friend. And, kind of the last meeting I had, I was with some counselors, and I said, "Look, I can get a job." They go, "Why don't you?" I said, I don't have an excuse why I haven't up to now, but I know I can. And I got out, and in a matter of weeks, I landed with this company that I ended up working with for, almost a decade, and it grew crazy. And I was part of that growth. I had the biggest sales in that company's history, and it went from 38 people to 150, and made great friends with the customers. And I kind of learned that's like, all right, I just take care of myself and be a little vulnerable and just think of what's really important. It's not important to, have a nice car, or that. It is important. The peace of mind is to be able to pay your bills, right? And be able to take care of others. And so fast forward, at the end of my career, I said I had a year left in me, but I retired a year. Well, technically, I guess, according to the government, I retired 4 years early, but I retired a little over a year ago. And before that, and since then, I've been able to do some great things for other people. And that, I don't know, I think that's my chasing happiness. So I have my peace of mind that I got myself and my family taken care of, but I've been able to go out and help people, not become homeless, help people save their dogs that have some insane vet bill or was going to be put down. And that, you talk about dopamine hits, that's what, I get. And of course, when the Dallas Mavericks win the playoff game.
No, that's awesome. We're from Texas. My wife and I are from Texas. We lived in Texas almost our whole lives. And so, very familiar with the good old Mavericks. But as far as, peace of mind, you've alluded to peace of mind a couple of times here, Bill. And so for you, you're just saying that's basically the bills are paid. And is it a number? Is peace of mind a number, or is peace of mind just I'm not worried about when my bills are getting paid because I know they're good? Or, what is it for you?
This is the second one. I think that you just, and now that I'm retired and, don't have a steady income, then, you keep closer track of that, and starting to downsize that, I don't need this house anymore. So we'll sell at the end of the year. But it's just, and then peace of mind also is just allow your mind to wander. That I'm a voracious reader. And so I love to read. 99% of it's nonfiction. I'm a geek for behind the scenes stuff. So I watch a lot of documentaries for behind business, behind entertainment, and then learning about other people's passion. I have this book here. It's called The Big Payback. It's the history of the business of hip hop. I'm not a hip hop listener, But I saw that in the bookstore, fumbled through a little bit. I go, this is really interesting. This is the most amazing business book I've ever read. And I purposely took like 4 months to read it. I have 3 books that I'm reading at any given time. Again, because my mind is not focused on chasing, some number or worried about things. I'm able to do that. And then just you mentioned in the opening, because my superpower, I always said that I never sold anything. I figured stuff out. And what that meant in the business world, I never convinced anyone in my career they needed our IT services. Instead, I went out and found people that are already in the market and showed them why I was the best option. And it was first about me and then about my company. And that's the big thing with salespeople. And why I know I was successful is I'll flip it. Buyers, they don't buy your specs, your features. They buy peace of mind. If you mess up on buying a TV, you're out a few $100s or whatever. If you mess up on a company purchase, it might cost you your job. So giving peace of mind, just not just for individuals in their personal life, is also very important in business.
Sure. I mean, and you mentioned relationships, right? I mean, it's you first and then the company, right? And so it's I mean, that's very, very true in our world, the financial services world. It's I mean, you need advice on something, give me a call. We have a relationship, we've built a relationship. You need a form submitted or something, don't know how to do some aspect of something related to anything we've worked on. Just pick up the phone, shoot me an email, whatever. And that knowing that your guy or gal is gonna be there in the future. I mean, that's worth a lot. It's not a dollar amount, but it's worth something,
Absolutely. It's the one thing, and this comes up a lot, even, today in LinkedIn threads about sales techniques and whatever, but my entire career, every single week, at least once, a customer prospect would shoot me an email, go, hey, thanks so much for getting back to me quickly. You're getting this information quickly. And it's like, I just thought I was doing my job. But I realized over the years that not all salespeople do that. And I hate it for my industry and the profession, but it allowed me to shine and have an amazing career. And it goes back to the peace of mind. So you're going to, what they felt, prospects who became customers, especially in IT services, right? It's not if, it's when something's going to go wrong. A data center goes down or whatever. We want to feel confident Bill's going to take care of us. And and this has nothing to do with money. It's weird. It was my biggest customer, but my most memorable thing with them had nothing to do with money. They pulled a very elaborate prank on me with help of a coworker. So I'm a moron. I mean, in hindsight, this is so dumb. But my coworker says, "Hey, you got this package coming to you by mistake, and we need you to open it and film you while you're doing it, so we can document for the insurance company." He's like, okay. I always say yes, right? So get this thing, and it's wooden, and so it was hard to get open, and there were a couple of new cuss words that were invented, and just my usual Bill Becker getting frustrated. And I opened it up, and there was these personalized gifts for my client. And so we had this weekly meeting every Monday. And when that Monday came around, because my coworker sent them the video, and I said, "Oh man, I am so sorry for how I reacted and for the cussing." They go, "No, that was the best part." And it's just, that's stuff I really miss about my job is the interaction with my coworkers and then customers, because you form relationships like that.
Right. Right. Now, what do you say to somebody who's antisocial, or they would describe themselves as antisocial? And we haven't even really gotten into your book or your overall kind of thing that you're doing, like really in depth yet, and we will. But just if you're saying it's so awesome, you get to have these cool interactions, you get to build these relationships with these people. Well, I mean, I've certainly spoken to people who would say, "Well, I don't really want to have relationships with people. I just want to be left alone." So, is that just don't do this type of work, or is that a think about it a little differently? Or I mean, what is your take to something like that?
It's think about it differently, because that's one of the myths that I shatter in the book, because it obviously helps if you're personable. And I make a joke a lot of times in my stand up, retired sales pro. I was in sales for 30 years, which is the perfect job for someone who hates people. And so some of it's a performative, but so the company I retired from, the second highest salesperson, he wasn't an introvert. But he wasn't outgoing. God, he loved his spreadsheets. But he was great at project management. And so he's super successful, making a lot of money. And so while you don't have to be personable, what I said is return messages quickly. Especially in IT. I'm the first to say, I don't know, but I'll have an answer for you by the end of the day. Or it could just mean bringing in a sales engineer into the call. The gist of it is having a conversation. Now, if you hate talking to anybody, then maybe sales isn't for you. But if you don't mind having conversations, just simple conversations, sales isn't about tricking people, high pressuring people, anything like that. It's simply having a conversation. And by the way, everyone's in sales. If you did a job interview, you were selling yourself. If you asked someone out on a date, you were selling yourself. If you were trying to get a project, through, it's pretty simple.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're always selling something in you wouldn't necessarily use that term, right? But if you stop and think about it, as you're saying, yeah, I mean, well, sure, exactly. I mean, what is a persuasive essay? You're trying to sell someone on an idea, right? And so we, at Perfect Spiral Capital, at our agency, we talk a lot about we're not really selling things. We're just informing people. We're educationers. That's not a word. We're educators. And so but we're educating. We're here to show that there are additional options. Because I feel like financial services is very like flow chart. It's like, oh, high risk profile, go here, low risk profile, go here. It's very, there's an effort to take something that is very organic and very personality driven and turn it into this very black and white, good, bad kind of thing. And that's not how I see it. It's, and so we'll say, look, I'm not here to manage your money for you. That's not what I want. That's not my job. My job is to teach you the tools, and so once you understand what's out there and what control you can have, you'll know what you want to do way better than I will. You know what I mean? And so it's a is that selling? Like, yeah, if you open your definition up, sure it is. I'm telling you, there's merits to some other ideas out there, but we just call ourselves educators. And so that's, I don't know. I don't know that this isn't a question. I'm just talking to you.
Yeah. Well, and today, most of the time, people are going to have done some sort of research before they ever talk to a person, right? That, I see these arguments that, well, it's, everything they can do on the internet. They don't want to talk to a person. I disagree. You can get the majority of what you need research before you talk to a salesperson, which just makes our job even easier. But so when I mentioned I didn't sell anything, I figured stuff out. That figuring stuff out in my business was, all right, so we have this platform. We want to bring this major software company on. It's like, all right, we got to get through security, cybersecurity regulations. We got to, work through legal. We got to work through compliance. I signed a company in Germany. You had to deal with the German Worker Council, which is just, personal information on steroids. But you fight through it. And what the other thing too that people don't think about is just as valuable of, answering someone's question. It's like, okay, what can this do? What's the best practice? What not to do. That is super valuable. They probably aren't going to find researching. So when I sold computer training, my instructors also did consulting on the side, which is awesome because they have real world experience too. They're just not reading out of a Microsoft book. So SharePoint is a big enterprise application. And so they did a lot of SharePoint consulting. They came in and they fixed other people's mistakes. They said, oh, you got SharePoed. But that the people really, stood up and listened or sat up and listened in class. It's like, oh yeah, we want to hear what you guys have to say because we don't want to make the same mistake that your client did. And that's over anything that you sell. In financial, it's like, hey, these are mistakes that, clients have made investing. That would be very valuable that you probably people would listen to more intently than, hey, this is, I'm just making stuff up, a mutual fund or whatever.
No. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that because the most successful podcast episode that I've ever done as a guest is called Financial Traps Everyone Falls Into. And that's what we talked about, and that there's like over 2,200 views on that episode. And so, it's pretty cool. But that is what people want to avoid. There's that fear of missing out on, positive things, but there's also that fear of making the same mistakes that other people have already made. And you want to kind of, I use the term compress time. You don't want to go through a 10-year process of learning what not to do by making all the same mistakes. You want to go, oh, well, if this guy can tell me the mistakes not to make, I'll just save myself those 10 years, of discomfort and just start in the right spot instead of starting in the wrong spot, over and over and over. Now, so going back to, I guess, kind of your story, Bill. So you went from a very, very low point in your life and you started to implement, these ideas that you gathered in this article, and you started to kind of rebuild from square one.
Below square one.
Below square one. Is that negative one? Is that
negative one?
Okay.
There you go.
Square negative one. And so, you had some ground to cover. But it sounds like you found yourself in a respectable position relatively quickly once you made that decision. So it sounds like that was an internal, like on-off switch. You're like, okay, I can do this. And then you were able to make the steps that take the steps you needed to take. Is that a fair assessment of that? And then,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like I had mentioned, when I started, it was a very small company that I sold computer training. And so this new job that I got right after everything went to heck, I actually was a customer of them. And so now I'm on the other side. Now I'm selling to training companies, but also selling to software companies. So the platform, just high level overview, is where you configure environments for software training because you don't want to train on your production environment. And so when the company started, when I first joined, it was mostly training companies like what I had worked for previously. And then there was Microsoft. And so my job is to go find companies not named Microsoft, software companies. And it's fun because you're, especially since I was on the other side too, that it's like, hey, I know what you're doing. I know the things that you're dealing with every day. And, and really the essence of selling is what can you do for me? And who else says so? Well, it's very easy. This is what we can do for you. Who else says so? Microsoft. And then as I go, Veritas and Sage and others. Again, there's not, and these are long-term sales. So this is not transactional. So in a previous life, how I first got started in sales in my 20s was radio advertising. I wanted to be a radio DJ and then realized that I didn't make any money. And even in my 20s, I knew I didn't want to be broke. So I convinced him, after several attempts, the radio station to hire me as a salesperson. And so I did radio sales for about 16 years. I took a unique angle on it and expanded that. That's what actually led me to computer training. Couple things I talk about is, sales is the one job you can get when someone's not hiring. And then also you can go create your own sales job and then go sell it to the company of your choosing. And that's what I did. That's kind of the overlap between radio sales and then into IT training sales.
It's a funny little aside, Bill. My very, very first job was running the switchboard kind of during, like queuing up commercial breaks and those kind of things at a local radio station, just for a very, very brief period. I mean, it barely counts. Like, I wouldn't list it on a resume, even if I was going back to, that far, which I wouldn't. But I did do that, and it was kind of an interesting experience. They would go do remote broadcasts. Some local business was opening in town or something, and I would be the only person at the station making sure that the commercial breaks were coming up on time and all that stuff. And so it's a little interesting, kind of a shared thing I would not normally bring up, in an episode, because like I say, it's just a couple of times, $11 an hour or something back then, they paid me. Yeah. Which was good pay at the time for me, but not overall very good. Anyway, so talk to me a little bit about your book. So when did your book come out? How long were you working on it? What's kind of your selling point, for the book? I know it's about sales, but that's all I know.
Well, it's not how to sell. It's why someone should consider sales as a career. So the first part I mentioned briefly earlier, that is right after 9/11. I'm getting all these people coming in for training. And it dawned on me, they're not laying off salespeople. So I had a very poor version of the book at the time. Then I just still had, the message was still important. And then so it's probably another 20 years that I just kind of keep there. I would speak wherever I got a chance. I spoke at the National Workforce Convention one time, and just whenever. The idea is, and today, and then I retired in November 2022, and then the book came out in June of last year. That I wanted the best I could. I fought with my editor a lot because she hates quotes, and I had to have a quote in every. I gave her a shout out in there. It's like, was she a pain? Yes. Is the book tremendous because of her? Absolutely. But the gist of it is, all right, here's what sales is all about. I mentioned earlier, it opens up with me going, I'm punching out. But I didn't. I was happy, and this is what happened since then. And this could happen to you too. And so the first part of the book is talking about the myths. It's not high pressure. It's not tricking people. It's not lying. It's simply having a conversation. There's also interviews spread throughout the book of other salespeople and how they got their start, what they did beforehand, and advice they would give to someone that's brand new in sales. And then the rest of it's kind of a roadmap on how you can go out and get your first sales job with no experience. There's, that's the beauty. Sales is probably the most, there's no barrier to entry. You don't have previous experience. You don't need education. And so I talk about how you can, first off, figure out what you want to sell. It's great if it's something you have a passion for, but you don't have to. And I use myself as an example. 20 years in IT sales. I'm not a nerd. I don't have a passion for it. And that really came home to me, a couple of years before I retired, that I had great relationships with my coworkers, especially the help desk. I actually devoted a chapter in the book that selling your coworkers is the secret sauce to success. Because you're gonna need sales engineers. You're gonna need the help desk. You're asking for something. Hey, can I get can you do this for me really quick or overnight? And I love them, and I was beloved by them. So, again, it's just you decide what you're going to sell, and then talk about how to go about presenting your message. Because your message is, hey, this is what's been going on in my life. These are mistakes I've made or things I wish I would have done. But we want to humanize it. And with the idea of that, you go, you know what? I figured out the best way for me to have the future I want and to be able to take care of myself and my family is help sell your stuff. And then I talk about how to get in front of that person who can say yes. You don't go through HR. You don't talk to a recruiter. One, you don't have any experience, so why would they pay attention to you? All they can do is say is no. You find someone who can say yes, an upper manager, an owner, get in front of them, I call it my come to Jesus, speech. And all you need is one person to sit there and go, wow, I just hit the jackpot. This person's motivated. What they don't know about my product or service, I can teach them, but they're self-motivated. And that's why the salespeople can get hired, even though that company wasn't necessarily looking for a salesperson at that time. Because, profit, expenses, revenue. You can only cut expenses so far. Any idiot can cut expenses. But if someone comes across that can help them sell more of their stuff or open new markets or find new partnerships, new revenue streams, you will always have an opportunity. You still have, to produce. And then there's a chapter in there too about, what do you do after you get hired? But again, it's nothing that anyone could do that. It's very simple. I guess I'm just trying to get rid of all the flash and misunderstanding about sales. Salespeople aren't that great.
And that's very similar to my own book in a sense. You start with, myths and I'm somewhat aggressive in the way that I present some of the information in mine. So I call it lies and half truths at the beginning. But, there's a lot of stuff out there in the financial world. And, a lot of it is not written or spoken with your best interest at heart. And it's not to criticize, I'm not attacking salespeople, but I'm attacking this overall kind of attitude and this sort of like following a flow chart, like I mentioned before. And so it's kind of fun to poke holes in that and be like, this is obviously not what you should do, right? and so, but poking holes in the myths around sales is a wonderful thing because it allows people to see, even who would say, "Oh, I could never be in sales." It allows them to see that they can do that. And sales, I mean, what I love about it is there's commission, right? You are rewarded based on your performance. It's not that you're locked into a salary and you're going to maybe at best get a 3% annual increase or something. It's, if you can hustle and you can make some things happen, you can get paid. You can get paid more. And so do you advocate for a particular type of sales role, like a straight commission or a, base plus commission or, anything like that?
No, I lay out the different versions because that's a personal decision. And it depends on too, if you're single and don't have, a spouse or kids, then you can, take a bigger chance and have higher commission. But it's professional sales have some sort of base. And so then, and that's all negotiable too, right? So you can say, hey, I need this. That happened when I started in my last job, that they gave me, they gave me a base. And then after a few months, I go, I just need a little bit more. And I kept that email when the two owners said, not a problem. We believe in you. And sales is the one job you can make more money than your boss. Outside that very first radio job, I always made more money than my manager. I had zero desire ever to be a manager. Why? You go into sales to control your own destiny. Like you said, the harder you work, the more you'll make. And this is a personal opinion. I'm not, but why would I want to become a manager? And then the 6 or 12 people that I'm managing, my livelihood is dependent upon them and dealing with, everyone's got personal drama. It's just, I love it. And I just can't think of another job that has those attributes. That's why I evangelize it, and I look for opportunities to champion it. And one thing that I'm very excited about, and just give you an example of the power. So when I started this out, I had different ideas of because there's the book and there's some other things that go along that I have. The one group I never thought about were people who were incarcerated. Now, today, you have people that are unemployed. You have a lot of people that are underemployed. That, they're like, well, wait, I'm working 40 hours. I still can't take care of myself, my future. Now that you were in prison for a couple of years or whatever, it's almost impossible. And I came across some organizations that are helping in those regards. But back to my spiel, I talk about that, that come to Jesus conversation. It's like, if you sit here and go, hey, this is what's happened in my life, I know you might be the only person that'll give me a shot, because people won't even, you've done time. We're not even going to consider you. There's a 3-year gap in your resume. We're not even going to talk to you. And I actually remember, so when I first came to Tulsa and was doing radio advertising sales, it was all recruitment advertising. So help wanted ads on the radio, and would go to the clients and, do some discovery and figure out what we want to put in the ad. And they had mentioned that they would consider people with a record. I says, that's interesting. Most people don't do that. He goes, well, and it makes sense. It makes so much sense. The guy goes, our hope is that they realize we're the one people, or one of very few that will give them a shot, that they won't mess it up. And so now I'm kind of doing both sides of that. Now it's like, okay, I was in for 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, whatever. I'm going to drive a forklift or whatever. Good, nothing wrong, but you can't get excited. And I started thinking about this over the weekend that, you can make a case. I'm selling hope, where, we talked about peace of mind in the article that started, our conversation. But to get to where you have peace of mind, especially if you're, what did we say? I was negative one.
-1, yeah.
To get to peace of mind, if you have nothing, you got to have hope. And I did have hope. It just, it took a stupid thing that I tried to do to myself to remind me. It's like, hey, I really do have hope.
Yeah. You got to snap out of it and start putting that energy towards something that's going to have an impact on your life, a positive impact on your life. Yeah. And so now you mentioned the incarcerated as a group of people, but I know you also are doing things related to homelessness, right? So if you would maybe mention walk me through that. I don't know any details because we haven't spoken about that at all.
Okay. Yeah. So there's some overlap, but for the most part, it's a separate passion. So when I retired, I want to evangelize about sales. And I said, I'm going to fix the homeless problem. I'm that belligerent. So, the idea originally is not mine, but 20 some years ago, remember Dennis Miller had a rant that talked about the homeless situation. He goes, this is not a disease that we need to come up with a miracle cure, right? Everything needed exists. So I did this speech for Toastmasters like 20 years ago called Connect the Dots. And then when I retired, I put up a site called Connect the Dots. And the idea is the first year I'm going to do a lot of research and look for best practices, right? What works in Tulsa could work elsewhere. A great idea in Denver could work wherever. And I can't help people. I can't stop people becoming homeless. That's way above. I don't even have great hope for that because of the not in my backyard folks. There's a certain part of the population that thinks people choose to be homeless. You want to see someone get riled up, put me in a room with those people. But people don't need to remain homeless very long. So I have a luncheon tomorrow, and I'm hope soon that there's an idea that I hope everyone is going to learn my name and the cause and the strategy, because this is something that we can take care of pretty quick. For those that are old enough, back in the 80s when there was We Are the World and there was all this good stuff for the famine in Africa, we had this Hands Across America. Everyone was holding hands. I did that. Did I help anybody, not go hungry in Africa? No. The point is, people love causes. And, that was before social media and everything. But if people, and the ones that I've already talked to, is like, hey, if I can get involved in this and I can actually see someone get off the street, know their name, know their background, know what's happening in their future, absolutely. And it doesn't really cost me much of my time or a few dollars. So, yeah, I'm very passionate about that as well. And I beat myself up because it should have happened years ago, but it's happening now.
Let's plug before I forget. I want to make sure we get all your websites and everything in here. So is that connectthedots.com or .org or
it's
how people learn?
It's connectthedots.cc.
.cc. Okay.
The guy that owns connectthedots.com doesn't use it, but he wouldn't sell it to me.
Bummer.
And then, for the book, there's The Job Nobody Dreams Of. And then for my academy is academy.thejobnobodydreamsof.com.
Okay, perfect. And so people can reach you on there. You act on any particular social media if people had, a direct question or anything like that?
There's both sites have places where you can, shoot me a message. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. The Twitter accounts for The Job Nobody Dreams Of and the Connect the Dots they're going to become more active.
Okay, very cool. I'm definitely going to have to look into more of your homeless outreach stuff, the Connect the Dots stuff. It's not a topic that I know all the ins and outs of, and so I'd be interested to kind of see what you're presenting there and watch your speech and some of those other things. So I'm glad we got into that a little bit. Now, is there anything, Bill, that I didn't ask you today that you were hoping we would get to? Is there any little extra passion thing that we didn't quite, emerge in the conversation, or did we more or less cover all the things you were hoping to talk about?
I think you covered everything that, you didn't ask like, is it true that you get mistaken for George Clooney a lot? I know, right? I don't get it, but some people see it.
There's a question that I read in a book recently. You might have heard this one before because you're a voracious reader, but A great icebreaker question apparently is, do you think you could take Al Gore in a fight? Like as a first question in an interview. So what do you
Okay.
think? Do you think you could take Al Gore in a fight? Fist fight?
I do. I may be 63, but one of the smartest things I ever did is have a home gym.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I'm a little vain, but also just, it helps, the stress of life. So across from my office here is what used to be a dining room. So I think I have a pretty sweet home gym. And I think I could.
Got it locked in. Yeah, that's awesome. No, Bill, I just appreciate you. I appreciate you humoring me with that last little random question there. So it's been a blast. I enjoyed this conversation very, very much. For all of you watching and listening, the links to everything we talked about are going to be in the description box for this video. Bill, thanks so much for your time. We'll see you on the next episode.
Luke, thank you so much. Take care.
Take care. Thank you so much for listening to The Price of Time, hosted by Luke Tatum. Subscribe to us for more episodes. Check the description box below to learn more about our guest. And if you found this episode valuable, please share it with a friend.